word leveraging, and like, what is leveraging? I'm hearing this more and more often. I'm like, what the hell are people talking about? You know, I think it's just that people come up with new ways to talk about money. They say, well, like capital. They'll throw terms around like, you got to have capital. What does that mean? Well, capital means you got to have money. Or they'll say, you need to have some equity. Well, what does that mean? That means you need to have some money. And what is leveraging? Leveraging is getting your hands on some money. Um, Specifically, leveraging is a loan, and more commonly, it would be a business loan. So let's say, for example, you have the opportunity in your business to have a profit margin of 50%. Okay. You might take a loan out for 10% so that you can operate your business and make 50%. So you're using that money as a lever, hence the word leveraging, to get a greater return in your business. And I think it does apply to business more than anything else. Because you could take out a loan for a lot of things. You could take out a personal loan, to put a patio on your house, but that's not leveraging because you're not using the loan to generate a greater return on that investment. Another way I've seen leveraging is that um, you get a loan, say for like 10%, and it's not advisable, but this is what I've seen done, is guys will take that loan at 10%, invest it in the stock market, and try to get 20%. So they're leveraging that loan to get an extra 10%. So let's say, for example, you get a personal loan for 20,000, you invest it in the stock market, and you get a return on that investment of 20%. So you had to pay 10% on a loan, okay, which was $2,000, but you got 20% return on investment, which was $4,000. So you're ahead by $2,000. So this is kind of like the idea of leveraging. He said you're going to take a loan, you're going to pay a percentage interest on that loan, but you're going to use the loan to generate revenue. Revenue is another word for money. You're going to generate some revenue that exceeds the interest that you're paying on the loan. So you use the loan for leverage, hence the words leveraging. So it's an interesting concept. I'm not against owner operators taking out personal loans. It just depends on what you're spending it on. Um, if you can get like I was looking at it today, I could get a personal loan from the Navy Federal Credit Union for 8%. Okay. Um, which would come in handy, like if you're doing truck repairs. Okay. Say you want to have some money in your emergency maintenance fund. Let's say you want to put $20,000 in emergency maintenance fund. Okay. So you take out a personal loan for $20,000 and you throw it in a high yield savings account. Well, the high yield savings account is going to earn you 4%. So what you're really paying is 4% to borrow $20,000. That's like, I gotta do my math here, but I think that's like $800. So that's really nothing. That's a very inexpensive loan. And you could use personal loans strategically. In a way, it would be like leveraging because you're using it for business purposes because you're going to use it to cover like maintenance expenses, for example, and your business is going to give you a higher profit margin than 8% or even 4%. So this would be an example of leveraging. Um, I wouldn't take out a $20,000 loan to go buy a motorcycle, but if you're going to take out a $20,000 personal loan and use it for maintenance on your truck, I'm not against that. I think that'd be okay. You'll probably have your truck payment loan and maybe a personal loan. But if you can manage that, that's fine. What you don't want to do is have a breakdown, need $20,000, and go with one of those predatory loan, options that are available at the repair shop. Those where you'll pay 30, 40% interest. So if you could get a personal loan for 20,000, put it in a high yield savings account where you're getting 4%, I think that's kind of smart. I think that's a smart strategy to do things. Um, Guys are very creative financially and otherwise. I mean, they come up with all kinds of ways to make their business run. You know, there's no there's no one set way that I would say it's a best practice. It's whatever works for you. Generally speaking, cash is king, but sometimes that's not always possible. Sometimes guys have to take out loans. It's always a good idea to take out a loan maybe when you don't need it. Okay, and just bear with me here for a second because uh, I think this is a strategy you might want to consider. Take out a loan when you don't need it, like a $20,000 loan. Now, I haven't done this, but I thought about it. Take out a $20,000 loan, put it in a high yield savings account. So, now you cut the interest you're paying on that loan way down. And then whenever a truck breaks down, you have it. You know, um, it's a strategy. That's what it is. Um, what happens is, if you need a loan, then you're under time constraints, right? It's like the truck broke down, and now you need a loan. Okay, then you're going to apply for a personal loan, and the bank may take 3 to 5 days to get back to you. You know, and then they may reject you. So you wouldn't really want to count on it at the time you need it. A better strategy would be is if you're thinking of you might need a loan, get it beforehand. That way, it's there, it's ready, it's at your fingertips. You know, um, when you need it, you're not applying for a loan. You already have it set up in your emergency account. It's like in a high yield savings account. See, I've always thought about this strategy, but I never actually implemented it. I might do it sometime. I might do it before the end of the year. But here's another strategy is if you buy a truck from Crete, for example, right now the interest rates are like 10 or 11%. Okay. And the truck is $80,000. I think it's $79,000. Okay. Let's say, you're going to put $5,000 down. I think that's the minimum. Percent interest on the remaining $75,000. Well, what if you had a personal loan that was like 30,000? Okay, that you maybe you got that at a better interest rate, like 8%, and then you applied it as a down payment on the truck. So now instead of borrowing 80,000 or 75,000, you're only borrowing 50,000 or 45,000. Now you got that truck payment down to a manageable level, and you're paying 2 or 3% less than what Crete's charging. It all depends on your credit rating too. So for me, my credit rating's over 800, so I'm going to get the best rate. So if your credit is less than 700, you may be paying a higher rate. So these are strategies you have to think about when it comes to leveraging. Can you get a loan and leverage it to grow your business? The leveraging is to act as a lever, to give you more of a boost, to get to lift your business up, a little bit. That's why it's called leveraging. So if you take out a loan for 10%, but you use it to get a gross margin of 50%, you're 40% ahead. So you use that loan as leverage to get higher return, higher return on that investment. So this is something that, is not very common. It's possible you could do these types of strategies. Um, like I said, no two owner operators are exactly alike. I think taking out a personal loan ahead of time for truck repairs, smart. there's nothing wrong with that. You got the money, put it in a high yield savings account, get 4% return on it. It's there at your fingertips whenever you need it. That may be very smart, versus not having any money to get your truck fixed and, scrambling to get a loan at a later time. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking, and you could be down for an extra week, trying to screw around getting a loan. You know, it may be a better strategy to get the loan, beforehand. You know, um, I'll tell you that after 10 years of experience, you don't really need the loan. I mean, my investment portfolio has over $100,000 in it, so if I need 20,000, I would pull it from there. But here's the thing: if you pull your money from um, your investment portfolio is probably earning a higher rate of return than what you would pay on a personal loan. So now we're looking at comparing the interest rate on the loan compared to the interest you're getting on the investment portfolio. So the S&P 500 average is 10%, okay? But some years it's 20% or more, So taking it out of your investment portfolio, it's probably not a good idea. Once you invest your money, don't touch it. It would probably be better for you to go get a personal loan, pay a lower interest rate, and let your money grow in your investment portfolio. It's always nice to know you have that money there, and there's no doubt you'll be able to pay off that personal loan at any time you really wanted to, because you have it covered, from your portfolio. You have it covered by 5 times. So if you want to take out a $20,000 personal loan, I don't see the problem with that. You have the money in your investment portfolio. If you ever wanted to pay it off, you could. But I would use the personal loan before I would touch my investment portfolio. And the other thing with a personal loan is that it'll help you build credit. It'll be an installment loan. And I wouldn't be in a hurry to pay it off either. I just make those monthly payments for the length of the loan and build your credit. It's always good to have installment loans on your credit file. You don't want just credit cards. You want a mix of credit cards and installment loans. So I think it's a way of using leveraging that I haven't explored before, but I might do it before the end of the year. I might do it in the next week. Not that I've given it more thought. And it's like, yeah, I'll take $20,000, pay 8% interest, throw it into a high yield savings account, get 4% return on that investment. So then my cost of borrowing is only 4%. And I'll have that extra 20,000 at my fingertips. If I want to use it for a down payment on a newer truck, I could do that. If I want to use it towards the purchase of a used truck, I could do that. It gives you so much flexibility. And there's no question you could pay it off. If you have that and more in your portfolio, you pay it off whenever you want to. But it's not costing you a lot, and it's very strategic. So this is the idea of leveraging. It's something that I think I'm going to be doing more and more of in the coming years. I haven't done it yet, but it seems like, it might be an opportunity. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.